No, I was arrested 20 years ago. Why? It was really nothing serious. Smuggled somebody through the border.
Hey,
They know it's fine.
we're going live. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Welcome to episode 40. Pause. Let's restart.
¿Qué pasó?
I forgot to press the record.
Oh.
He didn't use his seductive voice.
No, he has a pre-recorded intro.
Welcome, everybody. This is Omar Serrato with the Tilted Lawyer Podcast, episode number 42. And today we're going to talk about Alexee Trevizo, the 17-year-old senior graduating high school student class of 2023, who allegedly was not aware that she was pregnant, unabashedly gave birth in the bathroom of Artesia Hospital, where she left her baby in the trash to be found by nurse and staff members. She's currently facing life in prison as she's been charged with first-degree murder and child abuse leading to death. We're going to talk all about it for about the next 90 minutes or so you're going to want to strap in. Let's get started. What's up, everybody? I'm Omar Serrato, experienced and practicing attorney, fierce litigator, and unofficial commentator on the most popular legal issues of the day. I'm the host of the Tilted Lawyer Podcast, joined by Ileana Colon Rosa and the TLP crew, where we break down the human aspects of law that everybody wants to talk about. I've been a practicing attorney for many years, but nothing in this show is or should be taken as legal advice. We're not going to pull any punches. We might even get a little bit dirty, but we want you to join us anyway. Except we're not joined by Ileana Colon Rosa this afternoon, as she is preoccupied with her own affairs. This afternoon, I'm joined by the Tilted Lawyer Podcast crew, who is diligently searching their phones for information about this week's episode. Melissa Pacheco and Kashida Desai Patel. And so this afternoon, Alexee Trevizo, last week we did a case involving Chad Doerman, and he was the gentleman from Ohio, and I use that term very loosely, who executed his 3 boys in savage cold blood. Alexee Trevizo is a much different suspect than we're accustomed to. By everything that I found about her, all of the images floating out around her, she was a high school student, 17 years old. She was preparing for her graduation. She was preparing for her senior prom, milestone moments in the life of any young girl. And she was either knowingly or unknowingly pregnant with a child. She went to the hospital complaining of stomach cramps, and around 1:38 in the morning on that fateful day, she runs from her hospital room. She goes to the restroom, and as was described by the staff members of the hospital, it was the scene right out of a horror movie. There was blood all over the place, on the bathroom, on the walls, as if there was blood squirting in all 4 directions, as she had ripped the umbilical cord from herself, detaching herself from her young baby that she had then subsequently discarded in the garbage. The baby was then found by a nurse or a cleaning service lady, and it was reported, and then the rest of this entire melee ensued. She's since been charged of first-degree murder, significant because the DA thinks that she planned this all along. There's questions that are swirling right now about how much knowledge her mother had about the pregnancy. And in clear, candid camera, they have her on body cam footage discussing the incident with her mom, where the mom basically tells her daughter that we had talked about this, what happens when young girls abandon their babies, as in, was there a conversation about what happens if we give birth to this child and you try to discard it? I don't know, but it's been speculated, and mom hasn't been charged with anything, but it's been some of the question and discussion that's been taking place with this particular case going forward. So, Alexee Trevizo, who was she? She grew up in Artesia, New Mexico, not California. There is a city in California called Artesia. but the specific details about what we know about her upbringing are very sparse. As you could imagine, she, prior to this incident, was just a regular 17-year-old kid. I have a 17-year-old daughter, and she was living her life, and this, there's not a whole lot out there about her. Her mom, her name is Rosa, has mentioned that Alexee had back and hip pain since she was a baby, and more information about her childhood and education was not really readily available. All that to say is just that she was a normal kid. She was a child. She was probably, she was definitely a cheerleader. She was probably played like youth soccer or something. She probably was a softball player. I mean, I don't know, but she was in some kind of athletics. She was getting ready for her graduation. She was getting ready for the next phase, going into college. And but for what just happened now, and of all the directions that it could have gone, she's now facing the prospect of forfeiting her freedom for the rest of her life, a life snuffed out before it ever began, in the same way that newborn baby was never given the opportunity to consume oxygen and live his own life. And as they sometimes say, life is comedy, and that's where we're at with this case. What I've been able to find out about her is essentially that. What did you guys hear? I know that, Melissa, I know that you didn't really, this case wasn't really on your radar when I asked you to come and fill in and join us in this discussion. But Kashida, what did you hear about Miss Alexee before I asked you to join us on the podcast this afternoon?
That she basically threw her baby in the trash can.
So let's just chalk that up to the basics. Well, here's what I was able to find from Inside Edition. They published an article back on June 30th. They said that the boyfriend of accused murderer Alexee Trevizo spoke with the police officers, a New Mexico police officer, for about 2 hours after his newborn son was legally declared dead. Boyfriend name was a young man named Devin Fierro. His mother, Melanie, joined Trevizo's mother, Rosa, and stepfather at the hospital shortly after a cleaning lady discovered the body of a newborn baby boy disposed in a bathroom trash can. And at 4:19 a.m., the group was briefly questioned by a police officer from the Artesia Police Department, as the footage showed. And in the 12 minutes of body camera footage obtained that everybody's pretty much that's interested in following this case has already seen, no one is asked if they knew that Trevizo was pregnant before she gave birth at the hospital that night. Her mother does, however, volunteer that she wasn't aware that her daughter was pregnant, and that's kind of how she was acting if you've seen those videos when the officer questioning her. And it's a chilling scene. You got this 17-year-old girl who looks like she doesn't look any older than 11, 12 years old. She's a child. And she's now given birth, and they found her dead baby in the trash. And what must have been going through her mind at that moment? She's acting like it was, she was there for, like she's going to get yelled at by the principal or something, and then go on to, I don't know, Snapchat or whatever kids do nowadays. Hey, I heard there's a new one, Threads. You guys know what Threads is?
Threads.
What is
from
Threads?
Instagram.
What is Threads?
It's like Twitter.
What is it, though?
Twitter.
What do you do?
You write things. That's it. And then people.
It's just
opinion
another
about it.
stupid thing.
Exactly.
Well,
All social media is pretty much the same.
I mean, well, how would you define? I don't want to get off topic. How do you define social media? It doesn't matter. The point is that this young girl, she's sitting there with this look of absolute terror and horror on her face. But it was like there was this disconnect from me, because in most of the cases that we cover, it's cases of obvious evil, where it's very easy to personify the manifestation of the subject and define them as such. This little girl sits up and she looks, like she could be my daughter. She looks like she could be your girl's daughters, sisters. And yet here she is, first-degree murder. And the reality of what was going on, I don't think, even to this point, has actually hit her of what she's actually facing. But In the video, she's sitting quietly. She's next to her mom the entire time. She's only speaking to answer a few questions from the officer. The officer then informs her that he and Trevizo had been dating. This is the boyfriend talking to the officers for almost 2 years. They briefly discuss some of the pain he says that she had been experiencing in recent months, obviously from her pregnancy. Lower back pain is a clear sign. Fierro says that the last time Trevizo complained about the pain was the previous night, just a few hours before arriving at the hospital. Fierro said that yesterday, she said it's really bad, her back. And last night we were on the phone together and she said her hips were hurting bad. And I asked if anything else was hurting and she just said everything was hurting because she was probably in labor. Rosa, the mom, then tells the officer that her daughter has long had back and hip pain since she was an infant. The officer also asked Fierro at one point, so I'm not trying to be rude here, but you more than likely will be the father? And then the question causes both Rosa and Melanie to laugh, while Fierro just solemnly nods and confirms, yeah, I'm the father. In his stupid little adolescent 17-year-old voice, I can imagine. Rosa then breaks down in tears just 30 seconds later when the officer briefly discusses afterlife care. If you've ever dealt with or seen or been involved with what happens when a newborn dies, there's an entire
Stillborn?
production that takes place, where they literally will bring in like photographers and counselors and try to help whoever needs it to get over the grief. And so that's what they mean by the afterlife care. Sometimes if it's a stillborn baby, they'll literally dress it up and take pictures with the baby. And you've seen those pictures, I'm sure. So this is, as far as we can tell, the timeline, according to Inside Edition. It was the early morning hours of January 27th. So this year, Trevizo arrives at Artesia General Hospital complaining of severe back pain. Tests were run by hospital staff who came to discover that Trevizo was pregnant. And according to an arrest affidavit obtained by Inside, those results had not been shared with Trevizo when she told a nurse that she had to use the bathroom, which is, when I initially read about this case, I thought that nobody knew that she was pregnant, but apparently they'd done the test. They found out that she was pregnant, which kind of brings one thing that I know that the defense attorney for Trevizo is focused on is malpractice on the part of the hospital. So they failed to inform this girl that she was pregnant. She comes in complaining about back pain. She claims to not be aware that she's pregnant, but the hospital knows that she's pregnant. And as far as I'm aware, when a woman goes to the hospital in labor, as they must have known that she was in some kind of distress.
Not only in labor, in general, when a woman goes into a hospital for anything, the first thing they run is a pregnancy test.
Well, yeah, they did. And then they found out that she was pregnant. And so I guess my question then becomes, why wasn't she in like pregnancy protocol, like monitored, going to, especially since she says she has to go to the restroom. Why there wouldn't have been a nurse right there with her? Now they say that the nurses were there with her, but she locked the door and she was telling everybody to get out, but she was in there for a really long time and then they go in after the fact or whatever. But I just know that the defense team of Trevizo is focusing on the officer's malfeasance. And, well, we'll see where the trial's scheduled for this case in October. I don't know a whole lot of details about how the defense is going to come out in this case, but I did see an interview with the defense attorney where he's essentially very convinced that his client is innocent, meaning that she had no idea. And when the baby was born, she didn't know what to do and she was afraid. 17-year-old girl. She's not really trying to defend her leaving the baby in the trash, just stating that there was measures that the hospital could have taken to help the situation. Maybe could have had that child survive. That hospital specifically had a policy where if you're going there, it's an unwanted pregnancy, and you don't want the baby, then no questions asked, just give it up and we'll take care of it.
Mm-hmm.
Basically what they say. And one of the nurses on staff was asked that very question. She even said that, look, she could have just delivered it and we would have, no questions asked, no consequence to her, went through the appropriate protocols to have the baby adopted. Instead of that, in some kind of awkward reunion 25 years later when the child goes to try to discover the identity of his biological parents, well, he's gone. There's no opportunity for that. So after the discovery of her pregnancies, the results of which were not shared with Trevizo, a timeline of that bathroom trip, which is included in the arrest affidavit, it states that she first goes into the restroom 1:39 a.m. and remained in there for about 20 minutes, leaving only when hospital staff threatened to open the door because she's like, hey, it's enough. You need to come out now. And she locked the door. As staff started treating Trevizo, a member of the cleaning crew was called into the restroom. A housekeeper was called to clean the large amount of blood inside the restroom. The housekeeper cleaned up the blood first and then went to take the trash can out of the trash and found it to be much heavier than usual. I can't imagine how much heavier. How heavy is a trash bag, would you say, that contains medical waste? Maybe a couple of pounds. If it's a newborn baby, it couldn't have been more than 6, 7. Well, I guess that's probably enough to throw somebody off. The housekeeper says that she looked through the trash can and found a tied up trash bag underneath other trash. The housekeeper then saw what she thought to be a baby and immediately calls in 2 other nurses. And once confronted with this information, Trevizo said that child had been stillborn, authorities allege. So here is the difference. So legally, she's charged with first-degree murder. First-degree murder requires malice of forethought, meaning that she had, in order to prove this case, she's going to have to prove not only that, the DA has to prove that she knew about the pregnancy and that she intended to murder the baby after it was born, and that she did murder the baby after she was born and then, try to cover it up. That's the case that they have to prove. If they can't prove that she didn't know that she was pregnant, then it can't be first-degree murder, because what's the plan? Here's a baby. I don't know what to do. Now it's heat of the moment. At very best, you have involuntary manslaughter or second-degree murder or a heat of the moment murder. It's like, something where you didn't plan it, but in self-defense, you got really upset at somebody and took out a gun and shot somebody in the face because they pissed you off. That's not planned. That's not premeditated. It's heat of the moment. So the other thing is, if the baby was stillborn, then the death was not caused by her, arguably. If it came out and it was already dead, then I'm not sure what you have, but what you definitely don't have is a murder on the part of mom. So if the defense proves that she didn't know about the murder and the baby was stillborn, then there's no case here. There's other charges they could potentially focus on, but murder in the first is not going to be one of them. If that baby took even one breath and was alive upon exiting the womb, then you have murder charges. So that's what this trial is going to focus on when the time comes. So after everything, so she's confronted by the police. Trevizo was allowed to go home and continue to go to school until an autopsy comes back, and then it showed that the child had air in his lungs and that there was evidence of a hemorrhage that is consistent with hypoxia. That finding is inconsistent with the claim that Trevizo made to the hospital staff when she said that the baby was not breathing. So from what I've heard is that the defense is challenging the autopsy findings. And it's because of the very reason that I just mentioned, because this is a pretty simple defense if the baby had no air in the lungs. They're saying there was air in the lungs. The defense, as far as I could tell, is challenging that result. But, they're going to discuss that in October when they go to trial. She was arrested on May 10th, charged with first-degree murder. Prosecutors fought against pretrial release, but the judge allowed it. And Trevizo had planned to walk in her high school graduation 2 weeks ago while waiting trial for murder, until the school, they just decided that she was not going to attend. She obliged, and right now she decided that she was going to be in Texas for the summer with her grandparents before school starts the next year, which that trip could be short-lived because her trial is in October. I can't imagine how she's going to start. October is mid-fall semester, so again, she's carrying on as if everything is a-okay, and she's going on with life as usual. But there is a real crossroads here in her life, where in October there will be a independent panel of 12 jurors who will decide her guilt or innocence and decide whether or not she gets to have a life past 17, or if she's going to spend the rest of her life in a New Mexico prison cell, dealing with replaying the events of what happened back in January over and over until the day that she dies. That is what's at stake. She did go to prom, though, and even though the school rebuffed against it, I guess she was able to attend graduation. You had mentioned something like that, Melissa.
She was allowed to graduate.
It's just kind of awkward. I don't know. What if you girls were accused of anything like that? And that's obviously probably the talk of the school. And do you go to graduation or do you stay home? As her defense attorney, I'm advising her to just stay out of the public eye as much as possible.
Yes.
Would you even feel comfortable? Like, what would you do? 17-year-old Kashida, 17-year-old Melissa. How do you handle this situation as a young girl?
I wouldn't have left my room.
Exactly.
Like my room, not even my house, my room.
Well, she did. She went to prom and, lots of other things. Important to note, Fierro has not been charged with any crimes. I don't even feel why they needed to say that, but he hasn't. We talked a little bit about the incident in the hospital and how the staff had discovered it. I think it's worth listening to some of the interviews from the staff and how they found the baby to be. And I think we're going to do that. Let me just pull up this video and make sure that I have it lined up. I had it lined up, and you know what I did? I accidentally closed out of it. Okay, here we go.
Yes, I'm fine.
Ooh. All right, let me bring it over here. This is from Law and Crime, and what we're listening to is, number one, we're going to see a couple of things. We're going to see the surveillance footage of her rushing to the restroom to deliver the baby, and then we are going to listen to the staff talk about how they discovered everything that happened. But let's go ahead and take a listen. Let me just make sure I can get in that screen. Here we go.
Purplish, but still not like pink. I don't know how to describe it.
I've never seen anything like that, and I pray to God I never see it again.
It's what seasoned medical professionals called a bloody massacre, comparing this crime scene to a horror movie. Brand new body camera captures the unsettling aftermath when a high schooler gave birth in an emergency room bathroom, allegedly killing her newborn son.
I've never, ever seen a reaction like that girl.
On January 27th, 19-year-old Alexee Trevizo was admitted.
Look at that girl. Look at that girl.
That's an average 17-year-old.
I mean, like, I look at a girl like that, she's just a baby.
Yes.
She's a child. Like, she needs a hug or something. And she's just like, she's murdered a newborn, allegedly. But this scene, it sticks. This is what sticks in my head.
To an Artesia, New Mexico emergency room after complaining of back pain. Her newborn son was later found stuffed inside a trash can in a bloody bathroom she had just used. The high school senior was charged with first-degree murder and tampering with evidence before her graduation.
We discovered a dead baby in the bathroom. Oh my gosh. I'm sorry. It came out of me and I didn't know what to do.
Law and Crime Network first brought you the chilling body camera video last month when medical professionals confronted Trevizo about the baby.
See, I told you about this. I just asked you, baby, to tell me the truth. It was not crying or nothing. What did you do to it? Okay.
Now we're hearing from medical staff who uncovered the gruesome scene after she gave birth.
When I went in there It was a gory, bloody massacre.
Body camera video shows police officers speaking with medical staff who worked the night Trevizo was admitted into the ER.
She said she needed to go have a bowel movement, and that's kind of when the whole thing happened.
Hospital surveillance video shows Trevizo leave her patient room at 1:38 a.m., waddling toward the bathroom while clutching her back. Trevizo remains in the bathroom for 19 minutes as multiple people check on her.
I knocked on the door and I said, "Are you okay?" And she said, "Yes, I'm fine. I'm just having a hard time going to the bathroom," is what she replied. So I was like, okay.
At some point, I went and kind of checked on her, knocked on the door, seen if she needed anything. She denied. She said she didn't need anything.
Did you hear anything?
I didn't hear anything.
Flush, toilet flush?
Yes. After a while, I started hearing. So I probably checked on her 2 to 3 times. I'm not exactly sure. And then I just kept hearing paper towel dispenser and flushing and like the water running. And I knocked again. Did she need anything? Denied anything. And then eventually it got to a point where I said, "You need to come out." And I asked the clerk to get the key to unlock the door, because obviously she locked the door to go to the restroom. And whenever we finally had the key to unlock it, she opened it and just kind of walked out.
Did she say anything at that
She
point?
didn't say anything. She was just looking kind of straight past me and went back to the room.
Surveillance video captures that moment as Trevizo leaves the bathroom and heads back to the patient room. It was then that hospital staff got a look at the bloody bathroom for the first time.
And all I saw was like blood everywhere, like on the walls, on the toilet. It just looked like a horror film.
Police speak to multiple people who saw the bathroom, describing fresh blood on the walls, floor, and near the toilet.
The toilet's right here where you're at, and then the sink's right here. It was like up this way, blood splatter.
What in?
Like,
In your line of work, what would cause that kind of splatter?
I think something that got pulled out or ripped. Like if you rip something and blood just went, it was like.
All right. So I don't want to play the entire thing.
Okay, thank God you stopped that. I was getting dizzy.
Dizzy for what?
The blood talk.
Well, yeah. I mean, obviously it's gruesome. I couldn't even imagine having to do that by yourself. If you're a teenage girl and you have, well, okay, let's talk about this. This didn't happen to either of you, thankfully. But my mom got pregnant with me when she was 16 years old back in 1980. And her dad was a bit of a hard ass. And if you're going to tell somebody that you're pregnant and you're 16 years old and you happen to be the daughter of this man, is not that guy. Yet she faced the music and she did whatever. There was a time where she was considering getting an abortion, and back then, I'm not sure, what even that would have looked like back in 1980, but there was a lot of discussion around it. I just know that my mom was probably scared, and she grew up with, Catholic parents, and, she probably had who knows what she was thinking, but she went through this whole thing. And my mom very easily, in her 16-year-old self, 17-year-old self, when we're not even fully formed people, where our brains are undeveloped to the point where we're not even a third of what we're going to become, where all of our ideas are just forming, where waves of hormones are coursing through your veins, through the capillaries in your brain, dictating how you're going to think and the decisions that you're going to make, that it's not outside of the realm of possibility that maybe that was a consideration. Maybe I'll just give birth and nobody will know. I don't know I don't know. It's possible, but I just know that a case like this one, where you hear about a teenage girl that, claims to not know that she was pregnant, they give birth and they throw it away, and then there's like nothing ever happened. I just watched a whole, I watch stupid things on YouTube. But one of the things I watched, there was this lady up in Ohio who, back in 1993, she gave birth to not one, but 2 newborn babies and discarded them, those children. She gave birth in the bathroom, took the babies in a trash bag and discarded them in the wooded area next to the house, and animals had gotten to what was inside the bag, and that's how it was discovered. There's infant remains. And but for a 23andMe DNA test that I guess she had given, they figured out that, hey, we got the DNA from the baby, and here's a DNA match from this lady, and then they arrested her because of a DNA match of something that had happened 30 years ago. Frickin' technology, right? But, you know, this is Alexee's story. This is exactly it. The only difference is this didn't happen in rural Ohio. It happened in a hospital. And what pisses me off about it is that the hospital knew that she was pregnant. They had run the test and discovered that, and they didn't take the steps necessary to inform her. I would have thought that would have been like first thing out of your mouth. Hey, this lady's pregnant. Matter of fact, I think they should have probably strapped her up, took her blood pressure, you know, made sure that she was on whatever, try to figure out what the stage of pregnancy it was, whatever, all those precautions. Talking to her mom, even if it was 1:38 a.m., it's like, hey, this is what's really going on. You need to be aware because we don't know what's going on with you. Significant hip pain, back pain. That sounds like dilation. Like maybe she was dilated to 6, 7, 8 centimeters. It was to the point where she just gave birth in a freaking toilet. She probably sat down and the whole thing just plopped out. I mean, she was fully dilated. So she was already in the throes of labor. She was about to deliver a freaking baby. And the hospital just says, we'll tell her in the morning. That doesn't make any sense to me. And so as much blame as I want to place on the mom, it's hard because I was a freaking idiot when I was 17 years old. I was so dumb. I was just not whatever I am today. I was not that back then. And if I've made so many stupid mistakes in my life, and I find it the only reason that I'm not paying for them now is out of sheer luck. I could have gotten drunk and killed somebody in a car because of some stupid teenage party that I went to where there was alcohol. I could have, gotten into some kind of a scuffle. Somebody cracks their head on the pavement, and next thing you know, I'm arrested for whatever. And, there's so many things that could happen to young people because we do such stupid things, impulsive things when we're young and idealistic and full of hormones. And this young lady, faced with probably the greatest pivot of her entire life, has to deal with it at age 17. Some people get to face that decision when they're 35. Some people, through no fault of their own, by a clear measure of fate, face it when they're 17, and that was her. And so here she is. And what does she do? Scared to death. Did she talk about it with her mom? Did she not? Did she let anybody know? Did she let her boyfriend know? Everybody seems to be pretty keen on the back pain and the hip pain thing. And mom says, oh, well, she's been having that kind of stuff since she was a baby, and I don't know how real that is or not. But that is the story, which means that if all of that is true and mom didn't genuinely know, then you have this 17-year-old little girl who is thinking about graduation, where she wants to go to college, what's her major going to be, am I going to get married to my boyfriend? Or maybe she's trying to move on. Who am I going to find new in college? What's the next step for me? What do I want to be when I grow up, basically? Oh, shit, a baby just fell into the toilet. Now what? I don't know what to do. Rips off the umbilical cord. Now what? It's not breathing. I'm so scared. So many emotions. My mom doesn't even know I've had sex before. My mom doesn't even know I'm pregnant. I didn't even know I was pregnant. What do I do? Maybe I'm going to just throw it in the trash and nothing will happen. I'll just tell them that I had a bowel movement. And then she goes back to the hospital room and, in the naivety of being 17 years old, and the nurses confront her with hey, so we know what you did, and we found your baby, and we need some answers. Next thing you know, hey, because this involves the death of an infant, you're going to have to be held here, and we're going to run tests, make sure you're okay. But the cops have some questions for you. And then you saw her face. Go back to that image. What I just described, that is the face. That is the face of somebody that just been through that.
Oh my gosh. I'm sorry.
That's the face. That's the face. Well, you get the point. So put yourself in her shoes. Melissa, you're 17 years old. Everything I just described in your household with your mom and where you grew up what would your reaction have been? Not 30-year-old Melissa, 17-year-old Melissa.
I think I would have froze.
Like she did.
Like, exactly. Something like that. And actually, her mom's reaction gives me a little of hint that she was suspicious about it when she said, like, we've talked about this before. I think her mom was suspicious
that was kind of
about
weird,
it.
wasn't it?
Exactly. It was, and how she stood up and she's like, I told you. And then she started crying. Gives me a reason to think that she was suspicious of it. They talked about it. And she had, like, Alexee denied it. She's like, no, Mom, you're crazy. No. And now this is like blowing in your face.
Well, if you look at some of the pictures out there, there's images of her.
Yeah.
And we're going to look at some of those. It's kind of baffling that anybody would not have considered that she was pregnant if you look at her cheerleading photographs. So let's take a look. So here's one. This isn't the greatest picture, but look at this picture right here. This is her, and this isn't even the worst of them.
I saw that one too. I was
But
like, really?
look at this. And you see the size of that girl. You saw the size of her sitting in that hospital bed. She looks no bigger than you.
She's tiny.
What's she like, 5'1", 88 pounds, nothing? Something like that. And she's got this going on. So a school counselor, a parent, a teacher might not have had, the instinct to maybe ask her some questions. And I don't know if that's happened or not. I question whether or not mom actually didn't know anything. There's no way that, like you said, based on what she asked her, there's no way that she didn't know that or was at least suspicious that her child was pregnant. Let's look at another one. So that was one. What did I just
And now
do?
that you actually mentioned the school, that's another point we could like raise an eyebrow on, because there's always nurses and counselors. And I went to a school that did a mimic to public American schools in South America, and I know here that the actual teachers' body, teachers, principals, nurses, everybody's always like walking around, and the single slightest thing that is like out of the ordinary, they immediately either report it or like they bring the parent or they bring the child if it's high school and they speak to them and they actually raise a question or like they start researching on it or like maybe talking between them like, hey, what do you think is going on? It's like this, like when we handle domestic violence at home or stuff like that, when we see kids that have bruises or have burns or stuff like that, like it's automatic that schools reported, doctors reported, stuff like that. So it's weird to me that she's in high school.
Look at these pictures. Look at this.
We're seeing that. Look at that.
Look at this one. This
like,
picture.
Come on.
She's cheerleader. Okay.
Look at her leg. It's like so.
Her legs do not match this.
No.
That is a pregnant lady.
Yes.
This is not a chubby teenager. Is all I'm saying. And then this one, I guess, come on, man. It just doesn't match. Like the body proportions, the arms, the legs. This is a pregnant belly. There's no way that's anything else. And if it isn't, there's some severe health problem going on.
Very bad. Like a very bad colon disease or something like that.
Kashida, put yourself in that situation. We've just described as you're 17 years old in your household, whatever that was like. And that situation, not 35-year-old Kashida, 27 or not even 17, even worse, 17-year-old Kashida. What do you do? Let's just assume that you didn't know that you were pregnant. All right. And all of a sudden you sit on the toilet and then, holy shit, it's a baby. How do you react? What would you have done?
I think my parents were pretty strict, but I still would have went to them. Like I would have went frightened to them, but I still would have said something. And it's weird, like in her situation where she just gave birth in the bathroom and didn't call out for help or anything either. Like she just like, oh, let me just clean this scene up and then just walk out casually.
So the way that the doctors described was exactly that way. Like, okay, so she finally opens the door and then she doesn't even look at the nurse, just kind of like walks straight like nothing ever happened, just hoping that it was all just going to be brushed under the rug. And
the way the women describes it, I don't know if it's a cleaning lady or a doctor. She's like you see the wall that's right next to you, and
Yeah.
it was like splashed with blood, and if somebody have taken something and ripped it out.
Oh,
And
that's
they
what she
don't do
did.
anything immediately. It's like they find the baby a little while later. Like they don't investigate the thing at all. You know, it's a little weird.
Well, they did. I mean, I don't know if the cleaning lady did or not, but she alerted people as fast as they can, but it was without life.
Too late.
It was
No, but I'm saying that's the cleaning lady
I know.
that did that, not the actual medical staff. Like I don't think they took it seriously. Like why was she like?
Like nobody inspected.
Yeah.
Mistake wants to correct us that she's not 17. She's not. Holy shit, she's 19.
So she's an adult technically.
How is she 19 and a senior in high school?
Well,
That's
I was
we just
19
talked
and a
about that.
senior in high school, but I turned 19 in May, graduated in June, so it could be that way.
Okay, my assumption was that she was 17 because she said senior in high school. That's usually year 17.
Or
But
18.
okay, so she's 19. All right, so if I adjust all of my analysis from 17 to 19, my analysis doesn't really change. 19, you're still kind of dumb.
No, you're still a child.
I mean, at 25, I was still kind of dumb, 27, 30. Nah, I was all right at 30. But 20, 25, 27, 19, I don't want to talk too bad about myself. I'm just going to say I would not have been confident that I would have been able to raise a child at 19. And I think about that. I had parents that were teenagers. They were 16, both of them. My dad at 16 was an idiot. Why? Because he was a kid. At 16 years old, I was still watching freaking cartoons. Maybe not, but I was like playing video games. I was a kid. My mom was, she was a kid. And I'll never say that my mom was an idiot. But she was a kid. She was a child. And, now that I think about it, it's funny, when you have a mom that's young like that, my mom is 59 years old. And then I look at her and like, hey, we're not all that far apart in age. Like, we are, but we aren't. It's like not that, I had my daughter when I was 25 years old, which is a much more reasonable age to have a child. But, my mom, my dad, it's hard to think about what life was like when they were kids because they were kids at the same time I was a kid. Like when I was 5 years old, my dad was 21, my mom was 21. Children. I remember being raised by my parents when they were that young. We were living in some rundown apartment in Baldwin Park. And, we didn't have a whole lot, but my mom, she did her best. She tried to cook meals and stuff, and she had these little top ramen recipes, and she tried to make it look like the picture with like peas and carrots, and it was disgusting, really bad. But, she did her best, and she got better. But when she was older, when she was, developed as a woman, as a child, it's hard. But, she managed, and she found a way, and I'm still alive, and I turned out okay, as did the rest of my siblings. But, it's hard for me to judge a 19-year-old and be too harsh on them. I don't want to be harsh on them, but the reality of it is that we're left with a dead infant. And the law system in the United States, not just the state of New Mexico, is such that if you take a life, then you are responsible for it, and there's certain penalties for it, and that's what this young lady is taking. And they have... she doesn't even have the possibility of being charged as a youth because she's over the age of 18, which I think is kind of bullshit. You are not an adult at 18. They should not hold you accountable for anything that you do prior to 23 years old, I would say. 25. There's this funny quote that I was reading. I forgot. I don't even know where I saw it. It was like on some kind of YouTube shorts. But it was like this very wise guy, and he's wearing like one of these, like a turban. He looked like he was like a Sikh religious
A Muslim?
leader. I don't think he was Muslim. I think he was an offshoot. He was Sikh, I think. But he was saying,
about Punjabi.
I don't know who I'm talking about.
Like,
who am I talking about?
Are they the people that wear the turban?
Yes. So anyway, he says, he was talking about democracy, and he's like, democracy, it's like it's supposed to be a government for the people and by the people, but the people are retarded. I feel like
He
I
has a
feel
point.
like that's literally what he said. This wise old sage was saying. And I feel like what he was really saying is the voting age in America is 18.
The age to buy a gun in America is 18.
Oh, that was the Rittenhouse case. Remember him? Yeah, that's too young. When you were 18, did you vote?
No.
Did you?
Mm-hmm. They're not here, of course.
Who'd you vote for?
Not here, of course. Remember, I became a citizen after.
Well, forget you then.
Yeah, I don't count.
Never mind. All right. Well, when I was 18, it was 1998. My first presidential election was in 2000, and I voted for Al Gore. And I remember the whole hanging Chad conspiracy theories and all that kind of stuff. You guys don't even remember that stuff, huh?
Wait, are you talking about? There's a
Al Gore versus George Bush.
Yes.
Yeah, the whole thing for Orange County in Florida, and they had the whole
I do know.
the recounts, and they were literally counting Chads, and you had this overweight middle-aged guy looking at the holes to make sure they corresponded with the right thing. That was my first presidential election. Miss Take says that there was a conversation between the hospital and her about being pregnant. She denied it, and she was a virgin, and said she was a virgin. And so they did a blood test to confirm. Yeah, I did hear about that.
I'm not going to judge her if they did that conversation in front of her mom.
Well, I doubt that the hospital did that conversation in front of him. I just sincerely doubt it. But there, on the video we were just watching, if we would have got a little bit further into it, there was a nurse that actually said that. They were talking about, she was still trying to convince everybody that she was a virgin. It's like, okay, well, you just had a baby, so that's out. So
yes,
let's get to the bottom of it. But yeah, I did know that. So, but even so,
Do you think she said that because of her mom?
I strongly believe so, because if I'm gonna put this out. Please don't massacre me on the comments. But I'm getting the gist that this is a Hispanic household because Trevizo is a Hispanic last name.
Oh, that's a stretch, isn't it? Trevizo.
Rosa. So I'm like,
yeah.
Pops me, it's like a Hispanic household. You know, that's a shock in Hispanic culture.
It isn't.
Like,
give me a break. I'm Hispanic.
Hey!
Teen pregnancies are a very real thing.
No. I'm not saying they're not real.
We breed like rabbits.
Oh, no. That's true. But I'm not saying they're not real. We all know they're a part of it, but I'm sure like every Hispanic family feels like, yeah, it's a part of it, but it's not a part of us. It's away.
I'll tell you what. I was having this conversation with Kashid before the show started. Like, I feel like this kind of thing that you hear about is more prevalent in higher income households because of pressure, because of I just feel like in certain households and certain cultures, teenage pregnancy is more common.
Yes.
And it's not as big of a deal. But if you're expected to perform and go to college and do all these things and maintain a 4.0 GPA, and your parents have put you through private school and they've invested all this time and money into you and propped you up as this perfect kid, all this pressure that creates on the kid, creates its own form of psychological poverty where they have no ability to account for what if things are not perfect. And so when faced with adversity at that level, they resort to trying to sweep it under the rug, whereas opposed to, hey, my mom had a kid when she was 16. What's the big freaking deal? It's like, yeah, see, you raised me appropriately. What was that?
What was her background?
That I'm not sure, but I speculated. I don't know anything about her background. I've tried to find information about her background, and it's not readily available. But her mother seems, aside from that questionable conversation that she had on camera, where she's just saying that we talked about this. Like, why would they talk about that? I've never talked about my mom about, I'm a boy, but I would never have a conversation with my daughter about discarding a baby in the trash. And
okay. I don't think she was referring to that, but
yeah.
What do you think she was referring to?
The sex talk. She's 17. She's 19, about to go to college.
Well, but they
or
specifically
maybe she could be talking about, like, we talked about this before, like, are you pregnant or not? Or because she was like showing,
Exactly.
It could be about that.
It could be
too.
about that, not discarding a human being, but about that.
I don't know, but it sounds fishy to me. I don't know. Why would you even be talking about that?
Like, in my opinion, she already knew, or at least she was suspicious of it.
If she was suspicious of it, which I feel like if I was a dad, I'm a girl dad, right? I got 3 daughters.
Yes.
4, 3, 17. And when there's stuff going on with my daughters, I know. I don't have to ask that many questions. But I'm intuitive with my daughters that way because I'm their dad, and it's my job. And if there's something like that, if my petite little daughter, and my daughter's not petite, she's like 5'3", she's an athlete, soccer player, right? But if she came around with the bell and said, okay, bullshit, what's going on? We're going to the doctor right now.
Exactly.
Either you got cancer or that's a baby. There's some parasite growing in there, and I need to get to the bottom of it.
I think like as a parents in general, they have this instinct about knowing if the slightest thing is off with you, because they know like everything about you. You could just be like sad or like one day and they'll be like, what's wrong, or like you could be acting weird, they'll be like, what's up?
I feel like I know when my daughter is menstrual. I could just tell. So I feel like I don't talk about it with her. I just make sure we're stocked up on like the Advil and the Midol. I don't mess with the supplies anymore. I let other people do that job. But when she first got her thing, I didn't interfere too deeply with that. But
thinking about it, a lot of parents don't talk to their kids about certain things. Like
it's
growing up in
taboo.
my family, sex was never talked about.
That's a hard thing for a man to talk about with their daughter.
Even like my mom, like she never talked about anything about that with me. I learned it through my friends. I learned it.
My
in
mom never
school.
spoke to me about birth control. Birth control
Yeah,
was the
me-
devil. It was profane. We don't speak about it. You don't see it. You don't smell it. You're away from it.
Yeah, exactly. Same.
So
And like just certain things weren't talked about. Even periods weren't talked about.
I haven't talked about them either. You know what I did when my daughter got her first
But,
period?
Imagine your
Just
own
send it
mother
to
not
me.
talking about it. So I understand in her situation having things to talk about, but being like weird. Because like all those stuff I learned in school. Like my mom never taught me anything.
at least you went through school.
Yeah,
That's
because
better
we
than
had those
going through,
special
like-
classes in school. I don't know if they had that.
Sex education.
Yeah.
Yes. But
I'll
yeah,
just
it's
say this,
true.
man. When my daughter got her menstrual, I bought her a bag of supplies from CVS. And I directed her to my mom and said, here, go talk to her. She'll help you out. Here's a heating pad and a stock of Midol and some pads. And I left it to more qualified individuals to have that discussion with her.
Exactly, because she's a woman, so she understands women's like things.
But I'll tell you what, if my daughter came home with like some kind of a bump on her belly, okay, I just don't think that one's getting past me for any reason. There's no way. There's just no way. There's no way. So, and that mom does not seem like the type that's going to let that kind of thing go. Like she seemed like she was on top of things.
Yes.
She seemed like she was fairly intelligent. She seemed like she was fairly successful. I just don't buy the story that she didn't know what was going on. I don't buy it.
Me neither.
Maybe it was like ignorance is bliss. Like if
She wanted
if
to
I
play
think,
stupid.
Yeah, if I think I'm just gonna hope my daughter's not pregnant,
Oh, I get what you're saying. Like
I
it
have a
may-
feeling, but
it
I
may be
hope my
it,
daughter's not
but
pregnant.
I'm just gonna ignore it and it'll
Mhm.
go away
Yeah.
eventually.
Yeah. It's there's certain okay, I'm speaking from the perspective of a male. And I don't ever intend to have, it's not that I don't ever intend. I do not, one of my biggest fears in talking with my daughters is bringing up topics of sex and pregnancy because I don't look at them that way, man. Like my daughter, when, she's 17 years old, I still look at her like she's like 4 or 5 years old, When I take my girls to go get ice cream, I still get her an ice cream like she's still the same. It's just, I remember like things she used to like back then. And it's, in my mind, she's always going to be like this 4, 5, 6, 7-year-old little girl.
Her age paused.
It doesn't matter like how old she is. It's just how it's always going to be. And so talking to her about that kind of stuff, but I'll tell you what, when I found out that some guy had done her wrong, it took everything within me to calm myself down. I mean, I was so tempted to do so many things that I'm not going to discuss on this podcast, but men go through a different thing than women do. I specifically went through a very different thing than anybody else had to go through with my daughter. And I'm thankful that the women in my life, my wife, my mom, were able to talk to her about those kinds of things. I guess the point is that if there's something off like that where my daughter is very clearly in distress, I don't think it's something that's going to get passed without at least so much as a cursory inquiry on my part to figure out what's going on. And what's more is my mom, when things did happen, was kind of the first to alert me to certain issues that led to full-on things that, well, so I guess, if I'm saying that, they kind of like destroys my argument. I'm just saying is the baby bump thing. That's a very tangible thing that is not going to go unnoticed by a parent that is involved in their child's life. And so in this situation, this little girl having that, coming home with that, and she's our cheerleader, and it's not like, oh, I'm just going to wear a heavy sweater. Look, here she is in a cheerleading competition.
I can't believe
this girl looks like she's 4'11", 95 pounds with this. This might have made her 115. And look at all of these people. There's probably 3,000 people in that arena watching her perform with her pregnant belly. And nobody thought to raise.
I'm sure people at her high school were talking about her too.
Of course, they were gossiping about it. Like,
they're like, we know she's pregnant.
When I went to high school, something like that happened, and the second somebody saw it, the gossip was all around the school. Like, she looks like she's pregnant. She looks like she's pregnant. Like, no. That story that either she didn't know or her mom didn't know, nobody knew. I'm not buying that.
Well,
especially after seeing the pictures.
We can speculate, and we could do all of those things. But,
like, for example, I'm going to throw a personal story here. I have an adoptive cousin. As of today, she is actually 17. And her mother, her biological mother, which is still in her life because they did an open adoption, the way she found out she was pregnant, it was because her periods came, everything was fine. She was 8 months pregnant. She didn't know. All she saw is that she couldn't lose weight. She was dieting and she couldn't lose weight. So because of that was alerting to her. She went to the doctor. She's like, I think she was 21 when that happened. She's like, okay, I'm not losing weight. I'm dieting and everything. And I don't get why I'm not losing weight. Could you guys tell me what's the problem? And that's when they told her she was pregnant. So it came into her like, hey, something's wrong with my body. Something's wrong with me. This is not normal.
Like any doctor you go to, that's the first question always.
Exactly. Like when was the date of your last period? Oh, let's
okay, let me ask you this then. How often does it occur that you go more than 3 months without a period, without raising your red flags that you may have some kind of an issue?
Not even 1 month.
Okay, but like what if?
That's not normal.
No, it's not normal at all.
It would be like a red flag immediately.
Like I count my days. I have my things. A week slips by and I'm panicking. 3 months? Oh my God.
Well,
like even if you're not pregnant, it's like
what's going on?
Off, like you're like, what's going on? You go to the doctor. Like,
that's what I mean. It's like, how could you go 7, 8, 9 months without having a period and just think that everything's okay? Okay, but ignore it right now. Right now, it's obvious, right? What if you were 17? How prevalent was that when you were 17 years old, 19 years old, 18 years old?
Okay, for me it was. I do have to say it. For me it was, but it's because my hormones. When something was wrong, I would either get bloated, or I would get dizzy, or something would happen in my body that it would be like, okay, I'm not okay.
I don't know. Do you concur? Like, okay, so when you were 17, a teenager, and you skipped a period for say 4 or 5 months, is that like out of the realm of possibility at that age?
I wouldn't say that long. I would say like 3 months, because like as when you're a teenager to when you're an adult, it's like things change so much for women, you know. Yes. And like once you become a woman, everything's more like consistent, rather than when you're a teenager.
When you're a child.
So I have some Q&A going on. See some of the questions that we've been sent. Did Alexee Trevizo have any previous medical or psychological conditions that could have impacted her judgment. Yeah, she was 19. I think that's medical condition enough. She was 19 and dumb.
I think that's enough.
That's the answer to that question. Why was Alexee allowed to continue cheerleading and attending social activities despite the ongoing investigation into the incident? I don't know, man. It's like
She looked so happy in prom.
Well, it doesn't mention that she was allowed to continue cheerleading. She was allowed to graduate.
It was controversial. She for sure attended prom. There's pictures of it.
Wasn't that after her baby died?
Yeah.
Yes, it was
Like-
after. And the school actually like made an argument that why she shouldn't attend. And she
Like, I
went
would be so
anyway.
devastated, like, after to not even show my face in prom if that happened to me.
Look, here's her picture of her in prom.
I saw it. She was wearing like a beige
Yeah, we
dress.
had this one. This is, look. She's fully recovered. Here, I'm gonna show the people.
I don't know, putting me in my 17-year-old shoes.
That's her boyfriend with that stupid hair. I would highly advise against that as another male. And his I mean, she's gosh, man. Gosh.
She looks like nothing happened to her.
I think one of our listeners just commented. He said that where did it go? I just lost his comment. But he was saying something about denial being a powerful thing, which is, yeah, that's true.
Denial is a river in Egypt.
He says denial is a powerful thing. Both mom and daughter had to be in denial. Sadly, pretending something doesn't exist doesn't make it reality. Yeah, I think if I was 17 years old, I remember how I used to think. And it was like, God, man, oh, whatever is about to happen is really going to suck. So I'm just going to have as much fun as I can today and worry about tomorrow.
Later.
Tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of, I feel like when I look at this picture, that's what I see. This girl that's just trying to put it off. And look, that day is coming, but I'm going to enjoy myself tonight. And I've been planning for this my whole life since I was a little girl, 3, 4, 5 years old, 7 years old. I don't know how it is for girls. I know how it is for boys. But for girls, how do you view your senior prom when you're a little girl? What does that mean to you guys?
I didn't go to prom, so I have no comment.
Well, then you're disqualified from this question. Melissa, what about you?
Did we have prom? No, yes, we did. It's my graduation ball. I had been thinking about it since I was like 10. So I do get her.
Well,
my dress, my everything.
when I was in high school, it wasn't really it wasn't like a landmark thing. It was just like you get to take a pretty girl out to prom, and like I remember there's like this whole Titanic thing.
Oh, yeah, they have themes here.
Yeah, we had a Titanic theme because it was 1997. That movie just came out.
Oh, my.
I graduated in 98. And so
the
it was like,
pictures.
oh.
The picture holding people.
Yeah. Jack, I'm flying. You get to take that picture.
I need to see your prom pictures.
Draw me like one of your French girls. That was not a high school
Okay,
thing.
that was no. No.
I think, okay, so I didn't go to my senior prom, but I did imagine it because I had a lot of dates, but I didn't go to prom.
Wow.
But I imagined going to prom with my dates.
So you
That
knew
was my
about
scenario.
what it was. Okay, so imagine this girl then, since she was 4 or 5 years old, she's been thinking about, oh, my senior prom.
I would be excited to go to prom with a date at all that
Well,
excitement, you know?
I had a boyfriend. In my
Yeah,
my
but wouldn't
graduation
you be
ball,
like,
so no.
wouldn't the energy like, oh, I'm going to go to prom with my boyfriend? Like, you know, that's the energy of high school.
Yeah.
It's
the
like your
dress,
I don't
the
know, like your
shoes.
quinceañera or your sweet 16 or your senior prom. That's like hallmark moments for a girl. For guys, not
Doesn't think about
that big of a deal.
quinceañera.
But for girls, it's like you get to dress up like a princess and you get a limo. Like my daughter, her sweet 16.
She got a limo.
You know what happened to that limo?
Yeah, you told me.
It broke down.
And nobody told you like until after.
I didn't learn until after. It's like, what? I paid all this money for a limo. I think it's $600 or something like that for a limo to take her from our house to the venue. And I find out after the fact that it was like they broke down like a block away. The axle for the limo literally just fell off, and they just walked their little in their dresses to the venue. And I didn't know about it until after the fact. Yeah, but you know, she had her Sweet 16 and her senior prom is coming up. And that's going to be another thing. I'm probably going to get her a limo for that. Don't tell her I said that. But it's coming.
No,
it's
you're
coming.
not getting a limo for that. The guy that's taking her should be able to take the
With
ride.
what money?
I don't know. Figure it out.
If I had a
Not
son,
you.
he's, oh, you got a prom date? You want one for limo? Get a job.
But your dad's son.
I want my daughter to have a good time. She's getting a limo. I'm taking care of it. That's how that's going to go. End of discussion.
Wait. No. Oh, wait. No, this was in 2017. I was touring in Canada. I think it was Quebec City. I don't remember. This guy rented a Lambo.
Well, that's a little over the top.
A Lambo.
A Lambo
like-
for a 17-year-old to drive?
No, they were 18. It was like a line of cars
Not any better.
going into the venue because it was like a castle. And I was like, oh, this is nice. And then I started seeing like the cars. Each car was nicer. And then at the very front, a Lambo. I was like, this guy went all out.
That's retarded.
All out.
That's not even.
Like, I'm sure this girl feels like the queen of the night.
Yeah.
She's just like, don't
That's
even
what
look at me.
That's what senior prom is for, man. And you know, so she was trying to do that, facing a murder charge, and I honestly don't think it's hit her what's coming. I don't think it's gonna hit her.
No.
She could be sitting there in trial, and they're gonna be delivering the verdict, and it's not gonna have hit her that she's forfeiting the rest of her life because of what happened in the course of 20 minutes, and how that changed forever. How her life is gonna go. I don't think she has any clue.
And more so that going to trial or starting trial proceedings takes a couple
Jackie G
months.
just said that I just quickly ruined the limo surprise. Yeah, sure did.
Yes, you did.
I don't think it's any surprise. I think it was kind of expected. It's like, obviously my dad's going to get me a limo. I was like, well, I mean, I guess I kind of have to now.
Yes, you have to.
Or a Lambo.
The Lambo's out.
Lambo.
First of all, I don't trust any 18-year-old to drive a Lambo. There's no way that's happening. Oh, so, all right. I have more questions. Where did they go? I had my questions. Where did they go? How did Alexee's family, specifically her mother and boyfriend, react to the incident and subsequent charges against her? Well, I mean, we saw it on camera. How they reacted. I think mom, her reaction on the body cam footage was about as raw as it gets. The officers are there. I feel, okay, I've done a lot of these cases. I've seen people react to a lot of shitty things. And her reaction, if I'm just being completely objective, mom's reaction to the cops being in the room, I feel like it was a little over the top, and I feel like it was partly to show the cameras that, oh, I'm so surprised, and, you know, what did you do? We had no idea about this, and I'm such a good mom. I got those vibes. What do you think about her? You saw that. You saw her reaction. What do you think? Am I on the mark on that, or am I missing something?
The mom during the hospital?
In the hospital, yeah, when she's on. We'll watch it
When
again.
she's like,
Here she is.
we talked about this, like,
Here she is. Let's play it again. This is mom
uh-huh.
when the cops confront her about what they found.
Seen a reaction like that girl.
On January 27th, 19-year-old Alexee Trevizo was admitted to an Artesia, New Mexico emergency room after complaining of back pain. Her newborn son was later found stuffed inside a trash can in a bloody bathroom she had just used. The high school senior was charged with first-degree murder and tampering with evidence before her graduation.
We discovered a dead baby in the bathroom. Oh my gosh. I'm sorry. It came out of me and I didn't know what to do.
Long Crime Network first brought
Okay, that initial, oh my gosh. Seems a little suspicious if you ask me.
It does.
Doesn't it? Like if somebody said, we need dead baby. What are they talking about? Dead baby. She says, oh my gosh. So
Like
it's
my
been
mom would be
processed.
extremely like hysterical. She would not be that calm. Just like, oh
Yeah.
my God.
If somebody said dead baby, it wouldn't register. I wouldn't say, oh my gosh. I'd probably look at him like a dumbass.
Yeah.
Like, what? What? I'd have questions. But she
Yeah.
says, oh my gosh. You know who says, oh my gosh? Somebody who just processed, who's already processed what's happened. I'm not accusing mom of knowing that there was a dead baby.
It was kind of like she knew kind
the
of reaction.
existence of that baby.
Yeah. That's my suspicion too. I've been thinking that since the more that I watch this video, the more that I start thinking that mom
Can you
knew
listen to it
more.
one more time?
Yeah. Here's the rest of it.
clutching her back. Trevizo remains in the
purplish.
Video shows Trevizo.
Yes, I'm fine. I'm just having a hard time going to the bathroom, is what she replied. So I was like, okay.
At some point, I went and kind of checked on her, knocked on the door, seen if she needed anything. She didn't.
Trevizo was admitted to an Artesia, New Mexico first-degree murder.
Dead baby in the bathroom. Oh my gosh. I'm sorry. He came out at me and I didn't know what to do.
Long Crime Network first brought you the chilling body camera video last month.
Yeah, and then we see there's a whole conversation that ensues after that, and mom's like continuing with that tenor of voice, where she's like, "We talked about this.
Yeah,
what do you mean?"
It's definitely a weird tone.
Yeah,
It's not a tone.
it
It's a
sounds
genuine reaction.
like you know what it sounds like? It's like a bad community college play. Like somebody wanted to put on Jesus Christ Superstar, and they had a bad casting for Mary Magdalene, and. You guys probably, well, whatever.
I do know who Mary Magdalene is.
I mean, the Jesus Christ Superstar, the movie, like the play, the production, the musical, you know, it sounded like a community college level performance of what she thought a mother would do upon being presented with evidence that her child was pregnant. And now
It sounded like it's something her and her daughter had been dealing with for a long time.
maybe.
Like it's an argument they had been dealing with a long time. So like when they said, "Oh, we found a dead baby," her mom is just like, "Oh my God," and just like starts arguing with her like daughter,
Yeah.
you know.
What if you had a 17-year-old and they came to you and said that they were pregnant?
I think I would be much cooler about it because I think it's just growing up and dealing with a strict family.
Yeah,
I think I would want my children to come to me and be comfortable about it.
I agree. In that kind, I agree because I grew up in a Catholic household, very strict mom. My dad he was not opinionated, but he did everything my mom did, and my mom was so freaking strict on everything that's something that I always said, like, I'm not repeating this.
Yeah, I don't want my kids to be like scared of me to tell me anything, you know.
Besides, when they lie, you get in a more fucked up situation, trying to hide it.
Well, you know
Yeah.
what? I feel like
And besides, it's not the end of the world.
I would react a certain kind of way, but my sister once came to me with her boyfriend at the time to tell me that they were pregnant. And then they came to my house and they sat on my couch. And then we got something to tell you. I'm like, all right. And then they told me. And then I remember my reaction. I went through like 20 phases of emotions. Like, well, I guess you're in the family now. So, and then he's like, I thought you were going to kick my ass. Oh, no. We kind of need you to be alive because you got a lot of responsibilities coming up. And that whole situation worked
Was she
out.
19?
No, she was in her 20s. And so it was not even the same thing, I know. But, for my daughter, something like that were to happen.
Like, of course, you're gonna be upset and like distraught. Like, oh,
Well, it's
my
life.
daughter is like so young, but at the same time, I don't want her to hide it from me. You know.
I said on a previous podcast, you don't get to pick the weather, You don't get to pick when it rains. You don't get to pick when it's 100 degrees. You deal with it as it comes.
Yeah.
So my daughter came to me with something like that. What am I going to do? I'm going to go kick the guy's ass. I'm going to go murder him. He's now part of the family. And so doing something like that is not helping the situation.
And besides, it's not the end of the world. Like I understand where it's coming from because they painted it to us as it was the end of your life. Like you died the second you found out. Like,
Well, I'll tell you what, it's not the end of your life in the physical sense, but it's the end of all of your hopes and dreams. Like what, you're going to go tour Europe on a backpacking hike tour of Eastern Europe because, for the next 9 months? No, you can't. You got a 2-year-old. Get your ass to work, and provide and feed your kid. All of those things are out. Just the tenor of your life changes. My mom had me. I don't know what she did when she was 16, 17, 18 years old. I just remember when she was first getting a job, one of her first jobs ever was at Smart and Final. And she was all excited to get that job. It was like a grocery store, whatever it is. Yeah, they're still around, but back then in the 80s, she had a job over there. And she's trying to get a real estate license, but she failed the test by like 1 point. I remember that. I remember she's working as a telemarketer for a long time. She would get her ass up at like 5:30 in the morning, work from 6 to 12, working on pure commission because that was legal back in the 80s. And she made that work. She just made it work. She worked her ass off is what she did. There's no time for mom to go backpacking in frickin' Hawaii. You got a baby at home. And so your life changes in that regard. The tenor of your life changes. It becomes one of discovery and exploration and, supplementing who you are as a person too. You got to keep this little shit alive. That's what it becomes. And maybe you're lucky enough to have success and your children grow up and they have success and you get to have your vacation later in life and your exploration later in life. But if you're having a baby at 16, 17, 19 years old, no, man, you got real responsibilities and you've chosen this path and now you're going to live with it. It's just how it is. It's the way it goes. Dad, those are the cards. And so for little Alexee, she could have been having that discussion with her dad or her mom had that baby survived and had appropriate measures been put in place whereby she might have been more prepared to deal with what was coming, but it didn't happen. And now the baby is dead. And rather than having all of those conversations in 20 to 30 years from now, her son doing a podcast and talking about how his mom was this big success and how she struggled and overcame and persevered. She's facing first-degree murder charges and the prospect of facing the rest of her life in a jail cell, 23 hours a day, 1 hour for rec. And good luck with that. Hope your commissary game is strong. 17. That's what Alexee Trevizo is facing, and her trial is scheduled for October. And I don't know. What do you even say to that? What do you even say to that?
We're just going to have to wait for October.
Another question. Was there any potential negligence or oversights by the hospital? Yeah, I think so. I think that conversation is already being had by the defense team. Namely, they knew that she was pregnant and they didn't bother to tell her, or when were they planning on telling her the next day? Was it the next morning? Was there anything medically that they should have ascertained before deciding to wait to tell her? Like, was she maybe 9 centimeters dilated? That seems to be an emergency situation for somebody with extreme back pain and hip pain, who sounds like they're dilated as if they're in labor. So I think that conversation is to come. What was Alexee's defense during the legal proceedings? Well, it's basically hospital negligence. She didn't know she was pregnant. The baby was stillborn. The autopsy results were faulty because of this and that. For all of the reasons that I've suggested, first-degree murder requires malice aforethought, meaning a plan, meaning knowledge and a plan to dispose of a human life at a future point in time and then carrying out and executing the plan. That's what she's charged with. And so the defense of that is, I didn't know I was pregnant. And when the baby was born, it was without life. If they could prove either of those things, she might defeat the charges. If she can't, then she's going to go to jail. What is the current public sentiment towards Alexee's case in her community and at large? I don't know. I know what my sentiment is towards Alexee. I have a tremendous amount of compassion and empathy and sadness towards her. That's my sentiment towards Alexee. What do you guys think?
It's complicated.
No shit. It's pretty complicated. How do we judge Alexee? I think that's the public sentiment. The public sentiment is it's complicated. And there's some people that are going to be enraged and judge her and say that this 19-year-old should have known better. I just got corrected in the comments again. She's 19. I'm aware. I know she's 19. I've been saying 17 because I've been talking about my mom who was 16. There was another case where a girl was like 18 and this happened. It's not an uncommon thing, literally between the ages of 10 to 19, any teenage pregnancy. There's a track record of this kind of thing happening. There was literally a case where this happened and some lady gave birth and tossed her baby in a dumpster. And the baby was discovered like maybe 7 or 8 hours later, still alive. And that baby's since been adopted And that lady was, I don't know what happened to that lady. Maybe I'll do a podcast on that show, but I don't feel the need. But this happens all the time. Why this Alexee case blew up the way that it did, I don't know. And what is the public sentiment towards somebody as Alexee? I don't know, because I think that we understand fundamentally as human beings that 19-year-olds are dumb. And I think we could all put ourselves in that position of being 19, 18 years old, a teenager, and recognize that we did some really stupid shit when we were kids. And how lucky are we that none of our mistakes blew up into something that could cost you your freedom or some other person's life.
Or your own freedom.
Either or. And so I don't know what the public sentiment is towards her. I think it's one of confusion, one of sadness, one of tragedy. And it depends on who you're asking, I guess. What do you think her boyfriend feels?
I think he's gonna. This is gonna sound rude, but I think he's gonna disappear.
No shit. He's definitely gonna disappear.
Yeah.
So his feeling might be one of relief. Oh, thank God. No child support for me. Maybe. It sounds harsh to say such a thing. But
yeah, but that's what runs through the mind of a 19-year-old.
Not just a 19-year-old, a 30-year-old, a 35-year-old, a 42-year-old, a 55-year-old. How many cases do we have like that where people are trying to get out of child support?
God,
Do you think they're going to find evidence between her and is that that's going to be part of her case? Like maybe her boyfriend texted her knowing about her pregnancy or her mother knowing about the pregnancy.
Well, keep in mind, so here's the prosecution's dilemma.
They need to prove.
They got to establish knowledge.
If her boyfriend knew something and texted her about it, he's not going to get away that easily.
Well, he will. You know why? Because he's not the one that threw the baby in the trash.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say he knew about it. Let's say he knew all about it. He wasn't the one calling the shots at the hospital. Unless they find something else different. Maybe the only way that would hold is if he was saying, okay, here's what you're going to do. You're going to go into the bathroom and you're going to give birth and then you're going to throw it away. Then nobody will know and they won't have to worry about this. And then we can go to senior prom. What's the likelihood of that happening? First of all, that sounds outlandish.
Like that at prom. He looked pretty.
I don't know what he looked like.
Are you gonna?
He looked like the Backstreet Boys with the frosted hair. That's like straight out of the 90s.
Justin Timberlake.
That look. I would have made fun of him if I was in high school. If I saw him, I wouldn't have.
Frosted tips.
No, that was a style back when I went to high school. People I hated that hairstyle so bad. The Backstreet Boys, I couldn't stand it. But no, I'm not sure what. First of all, he hasn't been charged with anything. The question of whether or not they're going to go through his text messages to try to determine whether or not he had any knowledge. Yeah, they're going to do that, but mostly because they're trying to determine if she had any knowledge. The second they find that she was knowledgeable about the pregnancy, then this becomes an easier conviction for them. So let's just say that they find nothing and that she legitimately didn't know that she was pregnant. But then the baby is born. Now what they got to prove is that the baby was alive when she gave birth. The only way they could really establish that, as far as I'm aware, based on similar cases, is whether or not the lungs were inflated with air, because there's that first breath. And that's what inflates the lungs. And you could tell whether or not the baby took a breath or not. If they could establish that.
People in her life just as accountable for her mental health, for her to do the things she did?
No, not for murder. So what you're basically describing is something called felony murder. So felony murder is a legal theory whereby if you, in your criminal actions, if you have a criminal intent, a felonious intent to commit a crime, and it results in the death of an individual, then you could be charged guilty or found guilty of felony murder by your association, in that the domino effect of your malfeasance led to the death of another individual. That's felony murder. But saying that the parents were negligent in not recognizing that there was health problems, not recognizing that there was medical issues. She was literally at the doctor's office. It's a stretch to attach felony murder to anybody in this case, as far as I know, unless I have more information. But you might attach it in my scenario where I gave where the the boyfriend was aware that she was pregnant and coerced her or told her that this was the plan and they conspired to do this and he was in on it. I don't even think you need felony murder at that point. You just have conspiracy to commit a murder, which is different in New Mexico. And so that's how that's going to shake out. But no, I don't see a felony murder accusation here. What I do see is after the fact, if Alexee ever gets out of this, a huge lawsuit against the hospital, because whether or not you thought that they were being forthcoming or not, and when they found the baby, the fact that they knew about the pregnancy and failed to inform her as soon as they found out about it lends itself to professional negligence, malpractice, whatever, that led to the death of a child and the criminal conviction, possibly, of Alexee Trevizo. So that's my analysis of it. That's what I think of it. And her trial is scheduled for October. Where we're going with this, I don't know. But it seems like the defense is exactly that. The hospital screwed up, not Alexee. Let's not point the finger at her. It's not her fault. The baby was stillborn. There was a significant amount of medical conditions that led up to this event. And the defense has been fairly tight-lipped thus far about what those malfunctions were or what they're going to raise. But they're coming out. They're coming out in October. And so we got a murder trial on our hands, and it's going to take place in a couple of months. What do you guys think about that?
Just gonna have to wait and see. Because as of now, I don't feel not competent, but like in the perfect grounds to judge her.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
I can't judge her. Like I was 17 too. I was scared.
Yeah.
So it's a really hard position. You have to consider so many perspectives, not only hers, but everybody's.
Well, there's a similar case to this one, not similar at all, but similar in the fact that it involved a child where this 12-year-old little girl stabbed her 7-year-old brother to death. Just out of the blue. I know she picked up a knife and just started stabbing him as he lay in his bed, took him to the hospital, and she's arrested, and she's like this little 12-year-old girl. And the officer's like, it's just such this disconnect between what this child did and the fact that it's a child. It's like, oh. And he's trying to tell her she's going to be okay. She's asking him, am I going to go to jail? And the guy's like, I don't know. Why don't we just take a deep breath for now? She just stabbed her 7-year-old multiple times. He was in critical condition. Couldn't find out about a day later, the child died. And now she's facing murder charges as a juvenile. And they brought her mom in the interrogation room to figure out what happened. She just lost her 7-year-old child, and now her 12-year-old is facing murder charges. Lost both of her children. And she was asleep upstairs. She just got home from her shift, single mom. Anessa asks, since she's an adult, is that the only thing that's taking her mom out of being charged of anything?
Bless you.
Anessa asks, since she's an adult, is that the only thing that's taking her mom out of being charged of anything? If she was a minor, could the mom be charged? The answer to that is no. For mom to have been charged with anything, they would have had to find that mom had a felonious intent to conceal a pregnancy and discard of it, and that she aided in that conspiracy to commit the murder. It'd have to be something to that effect. If mom knew about, let's just say that mom knew about the pregnancy. Let's just say that she knew about that.
Mm-hmm.
Did she know that the child was going to discard of the baby in the trash? How are you going to prove that? Now, if they can prove that mom knew about the pregnancy, then maybe they would bring charges like that. Maybe they take a closer look into that. I don't know. But no, I don't think it has anything to do with the fact that she's a minor or an adult. If it was a minor, I think mom would be more culpable in that she was more responsible for a minor. But this child is a 19-year-old adult. And so I don't think that really has a factor. They got to prove that mom had some connection to the actions that took place, which is this 19-year-old took from birth this infant and discarded it in the trash, How that occurred, how the death occurred is another question. Did she drown it in water? Did she just throw it in the trash while it was still alive and it was like gasping for air? And that's how. I just know that the autopsy showed that there was air in the lungs, the one that I saw. Defense claims that there's some indication that they're going to try to challenge those findings. But if the baby wasn't stillborn, then the baby died somehow. Was it drowning, or did it just suffocate because it couldn't breathe on its own, because there's no doctors there, and it was discarded in the trash in a plastic bag, and it maybe had a plastic bag over its face? I don't know. But that's going to be key in determining whether or not Alexee gets convicted of anything. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, this has been episode 42 of the Tilted Lawyer podcast. And if you've made it this full hour and a half, thank you for listening with us. If you're listening to the live stream, thank you for participating. I really love it when you guys participate. It gives me stuff to talk about. And if you guys are listening to this in your podcast while you're cleaning or driving or doing whatever, I really, really sincerely appreciate all of you. I'm going to announce that next week we have a very special show. It's going to be a follow-up on the Maya Kowalski case that we've been following, where I'm going to talk and interview live an individual that had her children taken away for similar reasons to why they took away Maya Kowalski's kid. And Maya Kowalski, if you recall, is the lady that committed suicide when a judge had denied her giving her daughter a hug. And then the next day, she was found from the rafters of her garage. That Netflix documentary, we're going to retouch that topic. And there's been significant discussion and controversy over my comments about Maya Kowalski. People think I've been unfairly victim blaming her, which I'm going to address those comments on next week. We'll talk all about it. But more importantly, I'm going to have a special guest interview participate for that hearing. If you guys can make it, I would greatly appreciate you guys showing up and participating and asking questions where appropriate. And we will get to that. Until then, make sure you guys keep your doors locked, because you never know what's going to happen in this crazy world. Keep your loved ones close, and we're going to see you guys next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you all for listening to the entire podcast. We really do appreciate that. And as always, you can find us on YouTube on the Tilted Lawyer Podcast YouTube channel, or on your podcast carrier of choice. If you feel we've presented anything of value, please leave a 5-star rating, like, and subscribe. We always appreciate that kind of thing. And we do look forward to seeing you all again live every Thursday at 3 in the afternoon. We love you all. Take care. Bye-bye. Thank you all for listening to the entire podcast. We really do appreciate that. And as always, you can find us on YouTube on the Tilted Lawyer Podcast YouTube